Lovers, I need to know, how is Cancer season treating you so far? For me, I have to say, the moment Mercury and Venus moved into Cancer, I felt weepy. And then once the sun joined them, I was a mess. I could feel every emotion in my body. I just have to say that my self care and movement practice has been my best friend in the last couple of weeks. Hello, my loves. Welcome to Align, the Astrological Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Galoro. And in this episode, we're talking about the period of July 1st to July 14th. We're going to see Venus and Mercury change signs again. Thank goodness. We're also going to experience a new moon in Cancer. Hello, feels coming back. And then we have two retrogrades that we're going to talk about. These retrogrades and this discussion is not to freak you out. In this podcast, I talk about the energy of this period so that you can plan your life accordingly. Before we get into it, though, please like, subscribe, and comment on this episode. I appreciate it so much. For those of you that already have done that, thank you. And thank you for all of you who have reached out to me either through DM or comments on the podcast and on the episode. It means so much, and I'm so glad that you are enjoying these conversations that we're having as much as I am. Thank you to everyone that joined us for Arise Preview Week last week. That was super fun. We celebrated the summer solstice. We also had our full moon ritual. If you missed any of those sessions, head over to paulgaloro.com, click Arise at the top of the screen. It'll take you to the Arise page. Scroll down, you will see previews of each of those sessions that we did together. The full thing is there. You can experience it. And if you want to try your own real-time session of Arise, check the show's notes because there's a link there for you to sign up to join me for a session. Join me and everyone of the Sunrise Social for a session of Arise so that you can experience this. The astrology that I'm going to be talking about for this period, we will actually be working with that energy in Arise during that period. That's what we do. Another thing, if you're curious about how this astrology for this period is going to impact you specifically, I am also doing astrology consultations. So again, check out my website, paulgaloro.com, click astrology, and you can find out how you can sign up for that there. The stuff that I'm talking about in this podcast today is just general. Imagine I'm giving you a weather report. I'm saying, hey, it's going to rain today, or hey, it's going to be warm and sunny. You are then going to take that information and apply it to what you have planned for that day. For example, if I say on such and such a day, there may be a challenge with communication, then you know, oh, anybody I communicate with today, I'm going to be very mindful of how I do that. Whether that is in a meeting at work, or you're having a heart-to-heart with your partner, or you're just hanging out with your friends, you can take this information and make it work for you. Now, just before this period begins, we have two planetary retrogrades that are happening. Now, the first one happens on June 29th. That's Saturn in Pisces going retrograde, and he'll be retrograde all the way up until November 15th. So we've got some time with this. And then we also have Neptune in Pisces turning retrograde on July 2nd. And Neptune will be retrograde in Pisces until December 7th. So we're going to see, like for this period of time beyond, for the next couple of months, that these two planets are going to be retrograde. I'm not going to talk about it here now, but I'm just going to say this. Anything that you read on social media that says, oh my God, Saturn, Neptune, even if it's Jupiter or Pluto or Uranus, any of these outer planets don't have such a major impact on us as, let's say, Mercury, Venus, or Mars going retrograde. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with retrograde, stick around for this podcast because I will talk about it in greater detail as we have more retrograde periods happen. But retrograde simply means it appears as though the planet in question is moving backward from our vantage point here on Earth related to the rest of the solar system. Now, it's not a big deal. We don't make a big deal about retrogrades. In fact, we use retrogrades as an opportunity to reflect on certain areas of our life. We'll talk about it a little bit later at the end of all the other astrology that we're going to talk about. But just know that for this period that I'm discussing, we are going to have Saturn and Neptune retrograde. It will last for a long time. You won't really notice it energetically speaking. But again, we will talk about how you can use this energy to your advantage. Now, we start this period with July 2nd. Mercury is going to move into Leo. So Mercury right now is in Cancer, so emotional. It's all about how we communicate our emotions. And now with Mercury moving into Leo, hurrah, we come out of the water space of all the emotion, and we're going to step into the fiery space. Now, Leo, the Leo archetype in and of itself is dramatic, it's joyful, it's expressive, confident, warm, charismatic. And when Mercury moves into this sign, we might start to communicate in this way. We might notice that our communication style is a little bit more bold, a little bit more dramatic. We might be a lot more expressive about ourself and our heart and how we're feeling in relation to how we show up in the world, how we express ourselves, how we communicate our essence. So for this period that Mercury is going to be in Leo, he'll be in Leo for about 3 weeks, where we might start to notice that our communication style is going to shift a bit. Our thinking also is going to be a little bit more confident and grand. So just be mindful of the way you express yourself. Now, here's the thing. Yes, I'm talking about all these great things. Leo is confident and joyful and jovial, etc. Yes, it's true. But just with everything, as there is light, there is shadow. And we just need to be very mindful of our communication and how we're communicating with others. Because when left unchecked, Mercury in Leo can be fiery, intimidating, maybe even a little violent with our words. So we just want to be very mindful of how we're expressing ourselves while Mercury is in Leo, especially because Mercury moves into Leo on the 2nd. On the 3rd, he's going to oppose Pluto. And Pluto is the god of the underworld, right? So Pluto tends to kind of like go into the underbelly of things and bring it up. And with Mercury opposing Pluto, we might sort of encounter this idea where stuff is kind of like pulled up from underneath so that we can release it. And we might release it through our expression, through our words, through having a conversation with someone. So just be mindful around the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th as Mercury is making this transit of an opposition to Pluto, that there might be some conversations that we have to have. And we want to be careful not to drudge up the past too much, but also not to let our shadow side get a hold of us. Being mindful not to be communicating in ways that are intimidating or that are a little violent or fiery. And as I'm saying this and as I'm looking at this, I'm speaking to myself as well, because my natal Mercury happens to be in Leo. So the way I express and communicate is a little bit dramatic and fiery to begin with. So I'm just making a mental note for myself. And so you be mindful for that as well. So July 2nd, 3rd, 4th, that might be a really sensitive time where Pluto is in this opposition to Mercury, but Mercury will be in Leo for this entire period that we're talking about, July 1st to 14th. So just be mindful of that. So that's the beginning of this period. And then on July 5th, we have a new moon in Cancer at 6:57 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, new moons, setting new intentions. It's the best time to set intentions and also to rewire our programming, rewire our thinking and our mind, because in astrology, the sun represents our conscious awareness, our worldview, kind of where our mind is at, the essence of the energy that we're in at this time. So sun in Cancer, again, we're focusing inward. It's a time for self-care. It's a time for healing. It's a time for nurturing ourselves. It's a time for being available to be nurturing to others. And that's why we want to nurture ourselves first. But then when we have the moon coming into the same sign, and especially when the moon and the sun are conjunct or come to the same point in the sky as we have in a new moon, we now have our unconscious mind and our unconscious impulses and our needs, our desires, all coming together in alignment with the sun. So we have this enlightening that happens, and it's in the place of the unconscious mind. So we might start to notice some things related to how we take care of ourselves, how we nurture ourselves, not just our body, but our emotions, especially because Cancer is a sign, a water sign related to emotion. So when the moon and the sun come together on July 5th, we start to kind of orient our mind to honoring our feelings and also connecting and becoming intimate with our feelings and using them as a guide. Now, Cancer is ruled by the moon. So with the moon being in a Cancer sign, she feels at home here. We might be feeling a little bit more intuitive. We might be feeling a little bit more emotional. Maybe the weepiness might be coming up. It all depends on how you handle emotion. That may indicate a little, that might give us some information about how this period might land for you. But again, this is a wonderful time. If you're somebody that works with affirmations, you might use affirmations like, I trust my emotions, or I know how to take care of myself. Other affirmations that might work for you are things like, I am nourished, or I feel protected. Now, of course, we're not just going to repeat these over and over and over again. When it comes to Cancer, Cancer is a feeling sign. So we want to feel these affirmations. So when we say things like, I feel protected, we want to find that feeling of protection within us. Or I am nourished. We want to find those feelings of nourishment within us. And if you don't feel it just inherently, if you're not like, okay, I'm going to sit here and feel nourished, if you don't feel that, do something that will bring on that feeling and then imprint that feeling into your being as you're doing it so that you can then carry it with you into this period. So the energy of the new moon kind of lasts from when the moon moves into Cancer and then when it leaves Cancer. And we'll sort of have this happening kind of like in the midway point of while the moon is traipsing through the sign of Cancer. So this whole period, so let's say if the moon is exact July 5th, say July 4, 5, and 6, you might orient your mind in the direction of self-care and the feeling of your feelings, and maybe asking yourself some questions like, when do I feel most at home? Cancer is a sign related to the home. So what do you need to feel at home? Where do you feel at home? Sometimes it's not always the place that we call home. Sometimes we feel home in nature, or if you are a water sign, you might feel home near water. If you're a fire sign, you might feel home at home moving your body. If you're an air sign, you might feel at home when you're doing something intellectual. If you're an earth sign, you might feel at home connected to the earth, whether it's climbing a mountain or going for a hike or being in the forest, in the woods somewhere. So just kind of ask yourself and feel into this idea of home. What does that feel like? How does it show up in your body? Just so that you can become aware with that sensation. You might also look at your family dynamics. Are there any family dynamics that you want to change? Again, Cancer being a sign related to the home also invites us to look at our family, whether that is our chosen family or our given family. So again, just reflect on your family dynamics. Is there something that you want to change this time period of the Cancer new moon? So July 5th, 4, 5, 6, this area, this time we might be looking in that direction of of our family dynamics. Again, Cancer invented self-care, so we might look at how do we take better care of ourselves and set some powerful intentions that will see us taking better care of ourselves. And also getting a better idea of what nourishes us. What I love about this new moon in Cancer is that 2 weeks before we had the full moon in Capricorn. So that actually invited us to look at the structure of our lives and see, well, what's not aligning with my ability to care for myself, put my self-care first, and do the things that nourish me. So we, at the full moon, that first one, full moon in Capricorn, we kind of identify what those are. We set the intentions here with the new moon in Cancer. And in 2 weeks from now, because I'm jumping ahead of myself, 2 weeks after this new moon, we'll have another full moon in Capricorn. Now, this is rare to have two full moons in the same sign back to back. It happens maybe once every 4 years. The last time we saw two lunations in the same sign was last year when we had two new moons in Aries. So it happens with the new moon and the full moon separately at separate times, but we won't see another double full moon for another 4 years. We won't see another double new moon for another period of time, around 3 to 4 years, just depending on how they land. So this particular new moon is great because, again, we're focusing on self-care, we're focusing on nourishing ourselves and taking care of ourselves and home life and family, etc. If we were paying attention to the last full moon, we might have started this process of letting go of the things that no longer serve us when it comes to how we show up for ourselves in the world. And then we'll have another opportunity in 2 weeks to catch any things that we maybe missed. But I'll talk more about that when we get closer to the full moon, the second full moon in Capricorn. That will be part of our next episode of Align. So that's July 4, 5, 6, let's say, with the new moon happening exactly on July 5th at just before 7 p.m. Eastern time. So you want to do your ritual. I like to do my ritual the same day of the new moon. And in this case, it's in the evening. So I would do my ritual around that time. But you can really do your ritual the day before, the day of, or the day after. The energy is still pretty potent around that exact moment of the new moon. But also know this, if you don't set any intentions around the new moon, that's okay, because you can set an intention at any moment. In fact, we want to be setting an intention with every breath, right? So if you don't set your intention specifically on that day, don't worry about it. Set your intention now, and you'll still have the universe backing you up to help that intention manifest. Now, there's just a little bit more to go through because on July 12th, so this is now the following week, Venus finally moves into Leo. Now, if you remember, Venus and Mercury were together when they moved into Cancer in the last episode. Now, Mercury moves a lot faster than Venus. So Mercury has picked up speed. He's already ahead of Venus. And so our mind has moved into Leo, and we're communicating dramatically and expressively and confidently. And now our heart moves into Leo. And the interesting thing is that Leo rules the heart, right? Every sign rules a part of the body. Leo rules the physical heart. So Venus, which is our ability to give and receive love, Venus is how we relate to others and how we connect with others. She moves into Leo, and she kind of feels all right here. You know, Venus is of the heart, Leo is of the heart. Venus is going to be focused on heart matters. So Venus kind of likes this here. We will also find, because again, Leo, showy, flamboyant, grand, magnificent. So with Venus now moving into this sign, we might feel ourselves feeling a little bit more generous, a little bit more warm and expressive in relation to others. We may take pride in our love and how we love. We might take pride in our relationships, not just the romantic ones. Venus is not just about romance. It's about how we interact with others. So be mindful of that. You know, we might start wanting to feel more grand expressions of love and romance. We might feel the need for validation a little bit more. And just as Mercury has its shadow side while he's in Leo, Venus also has her shadow side while in Leo. And so we want to be mindful of not being too excessive in our attention seeking. Make sure that we're not like seeking validation. Our validation should come from us first. And yes, as a Leo, someone whose sun sign is Leo, I do appreciate being validated, but we want to just make sure that it comes from a place, from a heart-centered place, not a place of lack. There also might be a tendency for like over the top displays of affection and over the top emotional expression. So just in this period, while Venus is in Leo, we want to find that balance between passionate expression and grounded connection. If that fire gets too carried away, it could literally burn things down. So just be mindful of that. And again, just as Mercury opposed Pluto when he entered Leo, Venus is going to do the same. Venus is going to oppose Leo in Aquarius the same day. So she'll move into Leo, and then later that day will oppose Pluto. And again, we just want to be mindful. Pluto and Pluto transits can bring in an intensity that is a lot. So Leo's a fire sign. So what happens when you throw gas on fire? Be careful, right? Or in this case, if you bring more wind into the fire, air fuels fire, right? Pluto is in Aquarius, an air sign. So blowing that intense wind onto an already lit fire, and if it's already something that's fiery and overly passionate to begin with, that gust of wind could just, send this huge flame erupting. So what does that mean? What might that look like? And I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying this is going to be specific. It's all depends on what your life is set up like now. But let's say let's say you're in conflict with somebody, and with Venus moving into Leo, we might be a little bit more joyful and warm in our expression and the way we communicate, and how we relate to others. But then bring in that gust of wind from Pluto that's exactly opposite of where Venus is. If you're already in a heated discussion with someone, it might send that heat and that intensity a little bit higher. So just being mindful of that. We do, because the sun is still in Cancer, we're still in our feels. We want to be very mindful that we are doing things that are going to be grounding our emotions so that they don't get blown out of proportion, or the pot doesn't get stirred in any place that we don't want to stir it too much. That being said, if you're in a new relationship and you're feeling great, use this gust of wind to bring in a little bit more passion and enjoy that like initial connection of that fiery passion that happens between two people when they are starting to get to know each other. Do you know what I'm saying? So this transit could be beneficial when we use it in a way that is supportive for us. So just be mindful of that. Again, listen to yourself, honor your needs. Again, with Venus in Leo, Leo is a sign related to the self, so we're going to put ourself first. So make sure that you're honest about your needs. Again, shadow of Leo might be, manipulative behavior. So just be careful not to turn to ultimatums or any kind of manipulative tactics to get what you want out of something, right? If Venus in Leo for you, if it's triggered by fear, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. So stay centered in your heart, and you'll be more heart guided during this time, which will alleviate any kind of major blowups. So that is from July 12th onward. So just be mindful of that. And also these dates that I talk about when a planet is changing signs. So I've already mentioned June 2nd for Mercury moving into Leo, and then July 12th, Venus moving into Leo. The days that the planets change, the planets change signs, sometimes we might feel a little off, right? Because generally we start the day with Mercury, for example, being in Cancer, so being a little bit more emotional and expressive in that way. And then later on in that day, it goes from water to fire, to then all of a sudden go from a place that's more introspective to now a place that's a little bit more outward and bold. And it might kind of just feel weird in your body. So just be gentle with yourself on those days. So July 2nd, and then also July 12th, while the planets are changing signs. Now, I did promise to talk about our retrogrades that is currently happening. So we have Saturn that went retrograde on June 29th. I didn't include it in the last reading because it was only a day or two, so I'm including it here. And then we've got Neptune that will go retrograde on July 2nd. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these retrogrades aren't such a big deal. They don't hit too close to home as Mercury, Venus, or Mars retrograde would. However, it does invite us to consider some things. So as I mentioned, Saturn is the planet of structure, is also known as the great teacher. So a lot of the lessons that we learn come from Saturn, but Saturn very much appreciates discipline, and not so much appreciates discipline, but is just like, discipline is Saturn's thing. So when a planet is retrograde, sometimes what that planet represents might be a little off. In this case, it's super important that we slow down, that we do practice discipline, and that we don't rush. When we rush through things, Saturn is always there to remind us to slow down. Just take your time, show up, do the work that you got to do, focus on having a strong foundation that you can build up, but also be very mindful of all of the things, especially related to the work that you're doing, pursuing your goals. Sometimes when a planet is retrograde, as I mentioned, it might, throw what that planet represents off a little bit. Saturn is about our goals and how we achieve those goals. So just stay focused and dedicate yourself to practices that take commitment. So a yoga practice would be great. Something that you show up and listen, don't make a big deal about it. It doesn't have to be a 90-minute yoga practice every day. But even giving yourself that disciplined self-care of waking up in the morning, doing your 3, 5, 7 minutes of breath work, maybe writing a little bit in your journal, and then carry on through your day. Shameless plug, I'm going to say it here, but if you're looking for a little discipline, especially related to self-care, because remember, the sun is still very much in Cancer, something like Arise, where you have a group of people that are holding you accountable to show up at the same time every single day might be, or if you're watching it on demand, then you can go at whatever time works for you. But that might be something to consider to help you stay focused on your self-care practice. Also keep in mind during this period, time, it's an important ingredient for every recipe. So yes, I'm talking about self-care, and yes, you might sign up for 1 month of Arise thinking, okay, cool, I'm going to sign up for this month, and all of a sudden my mornings are set for the rest of my life. That's not exactly how it is. And Saturn reminds us that you got to put in the work. You got to show up. If for those of you that are familiar with yoga, one of our yamas and niyamas known as tapas, it's that discipline. It's that showing up, even though you don't feel like showing up kind of feeling. So this is a time to really practice that. Spend some time in nature as well, because Saturn reminds us, slow down. Being in nature is going to help us do that. We also have Neptune that is retrograde, as I said, the same day that Mercury changes sign, July 2nd. So Neptune, we want to pay attention to our intuition, to our dreams. That's what Neptune represents. It's also important that we practice a lot of compassion. And also, don't be shy to connect with your artistic side during this time. As Neptune is dreamy, it likes to kind of like either daydream or night dream, but take you into that other place, right? Kind of, I don't want to say disassociate, but yeah, there's a little bit of a disassociation that can happen when it comes to Neptune, but it can be a good dissociation. So just kind of be mindful of that. And just really reflect on how you can better develop your inner guidance system and also be of service to others. So again, in Arise, we develop our inner guidance system through that daily practice, especially on Mondays when we focus on our intuition and strengthening our intuitive musculature. But during this time, while Neptune is retrograde, be very mindful of your boundaries. Watch them. This is a great time for you to sit and reflect on your boundaries. Set some if you need to. Recreate some if you need to. If you notice that, oh, I used to have this boundary and I haven't honored it so much, this might be a great time to reintroduce it. And then again, do things that will allow you to tap into your intuition. Arise is a great way to do that. But listen, I'm being silly here now, but anything that allows you to kind of just sit, turn inward, ask the questions, and then just see what comes up is a great little activity that you can do here. It's also a great time of inspiration. Be inspired. Let inspiration kind of just wash over you. Connect with your compassion. And this time while Neptune is retrograde, you're going to be all right. Remember, as I said, we don't fear any kind of retrogrades here in this house. We welcome them, we invite them, and we use them as opportunities to reflect. So the key things that I want you to remember for this period, my loves, keep up your self-care. The sun is still very much in Cancer. So we are in this essence of self-care and nurturing our bodies. Remember, the sun is a great way to nurture our body. It can recharge us so that we can then go out and be of service to others. So keep up your self-care practice. And also remember to be mindful of how you communicate with others during this period, especially that first week of July when Mercury is going to be opposing Pluto. Now, one thing I would recommend, or I do recommend for you, is to continue or start up a journaling practice. With Mercury being in this fiery sign that if not left in check can lead to some hurtful and intimidating and aggressive language and communicating style. Getting our thoughts out on a regular basis, and even if it's like for 5 minutes a day where you just stream of consciousness, right? Put whatever's in your mind, get it out of there and put it on paper. I like to do that either first thing in the morning or before I go to bed to kind of like empty out my head from the day before I go to bed, or empty out my head for the day before I get into it. But a journaling practice might be very beneficial for you right now, just to get those things out. And then if you start to notice that you're writing things that you don't necessarily, you don't like looking at them, or it's something that you want to kind of change within yourself, writing all of that stuff down and then burning it is a great little ritual that you can do to help transform some of those thoughts. And then finally, the other third thing that I'm going to suggest is to just be very mindful of yourself in relationships during this time. With Venus in Leo, you want to be mindful of how you show up, how you are the light in your relationships. And again, if left unchecked, there might be a little too much fire and too much passion in our relationships. So do the things that you can do to ground yourself. Be very mindful of how you show up in those relationships. So that is our episode for today. So I hope that you found something that can support you here. Again, my loves, if you want to know exactly how this astrology might affect you or might show up for you, hit me up. Check the show's notes for how you can get in touch and sign up for an astrology consultation where we can go in a little bit more in depth of the area of your life that all of this stuff might be happening, and some upcoming transits that might support you in some way. And then if you'd love to check out Arise, where we bring this astrology to life to help us set up our day for success, then again, check the show's notes. Join me and the Sunrise Social for a complimentary Arise session, and you can experience this astrology in action. I love you all so much. Thank you again for your time, for listening, for watching. Feel free to share this. And again, subscribe, like, share. All of that stuff helps me, helps the podcast, and helps the people that you are sharing, as this information is for everyone. So I love you so much. I will see you again in 2 weeks. Until then, mwah, take care.